Is the 10th Doctor's era technically nostalgia for people now? It only ended 6 years ago, and here we've already got a Big Finish revival. It's one of the most recent things that Big Finish have decided to take and run with, and the way that people talk about the 10th Doctor's era online now seem to do so with a kind of mythologised, misty-eyed air of nostalgia. It's kind of weird, as he was only just in Day of the Doctor a few years back, but for some reason it does feel like quite a while since we last had the 10th Doctor jabbering long streams of technobabble in exactly the same rhythm. I swear his catchphrase was, it's a thingamadoodah, 4 extra-treble babble spheres, hydrophonic security dampeners, and a something-something insert word here thing. Nice. Okay, I know people are going to say it was Alonzi, and I know that's what they were trying to make his catchphrase, but just... come on. Random set of nonsense said very fast with an upward inflection is the 10th Doctor in a nutshell. And he does do that in this box set, but he doesn't say Alonzi once. Well, as far as I can remember. So Big Finish agree with me, I win. Now to start out with, 3 things this first collection of new 10th Doctor stories has done insanely right off the bat. Number 1, Donna. The 10th Doctor's era is the Marmite of the franchise. There are lots of people out there who dislike the era, and most of them, let's be frank, are Classic Who fans. And if they'd gone straight in with 10 and Rose, a lot of Big Finish's hardcore fanbase would probably be rolling their eyes, as many of them did with the announcement of the River Song spin-off, whereas Donna had a lot more crossover appeal. Even moody fucks like myself can't deny that she is by and large one of the best things about New Who, so 10 and Donna is the right way to go. Number 2, there's no returning aliens. While Big Finish had been granted the license to use monsters from the new series, this box set is all new IP, making the statement that the 10th Doctor adventures aren't going to be purely subsisting on nostalgia and nothing else, which is 100% the right way to go. At least I thought that before listening to it. More on that later. And 3, the box design for the limited edition is just awesome. If you see mine I've got here, I particularly like this cardboard sleeve it comes in. Just look at this thing. When it comes to cardboard that I own, it's by and large one of my favourite bits of cardboard. Like, it's so solid. Just look at that. I have added it to my collection of cardboards. It is my number 39th favourite bit of cardboard ever. Sometimes I like to line up my favourite bits of cardboard and play dominoes with them. Whee! If you are also a fan of cardboard, please like my Facebook page about it. Anyway, the first story, Technophobia, had a bit of a divisive reception, and while there are a few obvious teething issues with it, there's a few kinda crowbarred in moments of the box set being a bit too pleased with itself for managing to recruit one of the popular Doctors who's pretty much been deified on the internet in the aftermath of lots of people's growing disdain for the way that New Who's been going lately. The technobabble, the jokes about Donna's flirtiness, etc. And the opening of it does try a bit too hard to make it feel like an episode from Russell's era, when I was much more interested in hearing Big Finish trying to offer their own take on the 10th Doctor's era, rather than trying to recapture the past. But I suppose they've got an opportunity to hook people in whose first Doctor was 10, so I'd kinda let them off here when they're just coming out of the gate with it. That said, once it got going, I did really enjoy the premise of Technophobia. People in London suddenly become terrified of any and all technology. They're chucking their mobile phones away, they're scared to death of escalators, or moving stairs as they're now called. There's also this one bit where a guy gets shit up by a vacuum cleaner, which I could personally relate to, as I also have a morbid inexplicable fear of my vacuum cleaner. I mean, just look at its eyes for fuck's sake, it's watching me! As I've made clear with 2 of my original sci-fi stories that I've uploaded to my channel, I'm a bit of a technophobe myself, and yet I have a strange fascination with man's relationship with technology and the direction it's going in. And I do like a lot of sci-fi that explores the relationship between man and machine. And while the story itself didn't exactly go that deep into said vat of questions and issues, it mostly just ended up being aliens with voice changes are conducting experiments, but I was engaged in the story throughout. The dialogue's very chirpy and warm, and it did have some pretty creative gags in it about tech that did make me laugh. I guess you kinda have to be a bit of a technophobe yourself to really click with this one, cause it certainly did with me. The second story is called Time Reaver, which I personally found to be a bit of a scattered affair. The central premise is a really interesting one. An illegal weapon called a Time Reaver that stretches a moment in the victim's life out for a very long time is being traded on the black market on the streets of insert name of alien planet here. I find just the idea of it very encouraging because it's essentially a crime drama about illegal weapons trafficking, which doubles up as drug dealing, since the aliens in this one are using Time Reavers on themselves to stretch out a moment of happiness for as long as possible, and enemies use it to stretch out the opponent's moment of death for an agonisingly long time. This is precisely what I was hoping Big Finish would do with this set. Present the 10th Doctor with some darker subject matter, add the light-hearted tinge to it that's reminiscent of his era, but make it a bit more grown up in tone. Sort of like how that movie Zootropolis dealt with racism and drug dealing within the context of ostensibly being a funny talking animal movie. It's an awesome movie while I'm here, I totally recommend it. It's so much more than just a movie about some talking animals that live in a city. Time Reaver does have its moments of trying to present something deeper than it actually manages. We've got this girl called Cora, one of the aliens dealing Time Reavers, who wanted people to use them to stretch out weddings or watch beautiful sunsets, and is then horrified to find Time Reavers being used for much less hippy-dippy purposes in the real world. The wider universe has a lot more teeth to it than she realised. However, these moments were a bit too few and far between for my liking. The story itself is less about the mechanics of the Time Reaver and how it works and affects people, and more about the logistics of the arms trafficking that's going on, which I personally think is the much less interesting side of the story. I was a lot more interested in the technology itself and its implications. If it had maybe been a bit longer and had more room to flesh out the alien world and the people using the Time Reavers, and we focused a bit more on that, we would have had the darker take on the 10th Doctor's era that I was hoping this set would be. But like with Technophobia, while I liked it, I felt it was kind of being held back by trying to act in the capacity of the Russell era, rather than Big Finish's 10th Doctor adventures. The box set finishes with Death and the Queen, which sees Donna marrying the Prince of a Kingdom in the 16th century that the Doctor's never heard of, which exists inside this little imperceptible bubble shut off from the real world. And then on the day of Donna's wedding, a massive talking cloud arrives and brings a deadly mist, out of which comes Death himself, who lays siege to the castle. I felt the start of this one was a little bit shaky, as it had a lot of setup to get out there about this kingdom and the prince that Donna's getting married to. Like with Time Reaver, this was another one that had about 2 episodes worth of content in a 1-episode story. Hey, what do you know, it is just like New Who. But I found this one to be one of the funnier releases that I've heard from Big Finish in recent times. Death and the Queen is a completely ludicrous fairy tale, and it's so ridiculous that you can't help but laugh when something completely over the top and stupid happens, with stuff like the arrival of the talking cloud itself, and Donna teaching 16th century maids shorthand. While the character of Donna is feeling a bit rusty in this box set, she's a lot shallower and more like the Donna from Runaway Bride than the Donna from later in her character arc in season 4, but she's still fun as ever, and I'd be surprised if this one doesn't make you laugh a fair few times. It's not just stupid though, it does have its darker moments. There's a huge massacre around the middle, and a really poetic bit where it looks like Donna's about to die, and a couple of really clever plot twists that did have me thinking, I didn't think of that. And yet it surprisingly manages to make a lot of sense of the ridiculous fairy tale narrative style. It's not jarring though, the fucking lunacy of the plot coupled with its darker moments are all structurally integral to the whole thing, to get those strands unravelling to reveal what's actually going on here piece by piece over the course of the episode. If I were going to compare it to anything, it'd definitely be Mummy on the Orient Express, which you may remember I loved the shit out of. This one's very similarly structured, complete with the contemplative reflective moment at the end. I don't like Death and the Queen as much, but I'd be surprised if you didn't at the very least enjoy this one. So yeah, overall, this box set was a pretty decent start, and it made for a fun few hours, but I do feel it suffers a bit from holding back on establishing this range's own identity. They were probably playing it a bit safer than they might have done, seeing as the 10th Doctor and Donna returning for 3 audio dramas is a pretty big deal, and this set has probably sold really well. But when it comes to a second box set, which I'm assuming will probably happen next year, I'm really hoping that behind the scenes, someone says, right, now we've got the 10th Doctor fans' attentions, now it's time to experiment more and mess about with their expectations.